I'm Michael Avery, and you're listening to an interview I conducted for Classic Business on Classic FM 102.7.
Well, welcome back to Classic Business, brought to you by Old Mutual Wealth. Most of us have never given thought to the level of care that the South African tax authorities are required to use when looking at our affairs. To discuss this in more detail, I'm joined by Dr Beric Croome. He's an executive in the tax department at ENS Africa. Good evening, Beric.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. For joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
Maybe just let's just start off by explaining the concept of duty and care when it comes to SARS. What are we talking about?
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize that revenue does have certain powers, but at the end of the day, they are an organ of state and are subject to the provisions of the rule of law and the Constitution. They're not able to just do as they wish. They have to work within certain codes of conduct that they have themselves imposed, and they have to act in a manner that is fair procedurally to the taxpayer.
So, I mean, when you talk about this code of conduct that you spoke about,
Yes.
Is this available to the man in the street? Can he have a look at what this code of conduct looks like?
Certain of the guidelines and that on governance are on the SARS website. The one document that is lacking at the moment is the Taxpayer Service Charter. Some time ago, SARS published the guidelines as to what levels of service taxpayers could expect from SARS, not only on an audit, but in their interactions with SARS generally. And for some reason, that's no longer available on the SARS website. That needs to be updated and released because, for two reasons. Taxpayers need to know what their rights are in dealing with SARS, and also it creates an awareness to the revenue official as to the levels of service they should be delivering to taxpayers.
So when can the public expect this Taxpayer Service Charter to potentially become available to them?
You know, as I said, it was published, I think, 2005. It was being updated. It was on the SARS website, and then for the last few years, it's just disappeared. I know it's been discussed within revenue, but at the end of the day, the commissioner is the person who would have to sign off on that and release that. I would hope that, particularly now with the Ombud, that document would be issued in the near future.
Beric, maybe just a question here.
Yes.
If SARS does an audit, and let's assume there's a listener tonight and there's an audit potentially happening at their specific premises,
Yes.
SARS is supposed to look obviously at their own internal calculations, but also potentially look at the processes the client has gone through in order to get to a specific answer.
I think that is absolutely important because the problem that came up in this case that's caused a lot of discussion in Pretoria East Motors case was the accounting was difficult because it was a particular motor dealership with a lot of complicated accounting. SARS didn't seem to understand it, and they just took a view and they decided to tax without taking that into account, and the court said they can't do that. So it's important that SARS understands the information that's being presented and acts on that. And I mean, in this case, also the taxpayer offered to deliver documents, ledgers. They offered truckloads of documents, and SARS basically said, we're not interested in that. We're assessing you on the tax. And the court said that's absolutely unacceptable.
The interesting thing, Beric, though, is that, you know, for the remedy, it seems like, does really lie with the courts then at the end of the day, which seems to be quite a costly route to go for the average taxpayer in South Africa.
I agree with you, and that is a concern. But I think where someone is experiencing a problem with a particular official, that should be elevated to more senior officials within SARS, and failure of that resolving the problem. I do think that the tax ombud has a role to play in that oversight of process also. That is why his office is there. And I'd like to think that if Pretoria East type situation arose today, that the Ombud would take an interest in that and seek to address that through the processes in place with his office and liaison with SARS.
I mean, you mentioned the ombudsman, and I mean,
Yes.
I know if we look across various industries and we look at ombudsmen across various industries, they seem to be inundated with queries of the public. The tax ombudsman, you obviously have more to do with the specific ombudsman. How inundated is the ombudsman?
I'm not sure the volume of complaints received. He was appointed 1 October. He is in the process of compiling his first report to Parliament covering the period from October to the end of March, which I think has to be finished and tabled either the end of this month or early next month to Parliament and the Minister. That will hopefully give us some sense of the volume of complaints that he is seeing, the nature of those complaints, and the systemic issues that he's identifying that need to be addressed. So it's very difficult at this time to say what volume he is seeing. Because, before going to Ombud, one typically has to exhaust internal processes within SARS. There are exceptions that you can go direct to tax Ombud where there's financial prejudice or some other hardship that's arising, that you can go straight to Ombud. But typically you need to go through a process within SARS before going to the Ombud.
Yeah, and this is maybe interesting. I think you're mentioning something quite interesting here,
Yes.
and that is that, this specific ombudsman isn't just there to remedy action from a client perspective, but also maybe looking specifically also at SARS and trying to give them corrective action.
Very much so. And I think also, in his report he's required to list the 10 most serious problems and also the way in which those should be resolved. Making recommendations possibly where there's systemic, as I say, system-type problems or even problems in legislation to ease the burden that taxpayers face in complying with their obligations.
Being specifically in the legal fraternity and obviously looking specifically at tax cases and maybe not specific to Edward Nathan,
Yes.
but are there generally taxpayers in South Africa, are there a range of them that feel that they've been unfairly treated? Does this happen quite often?
I have no sense of the degree of unhappiness, but I think I wear two hats, one as an advocate and one as a chartered accountant. I know that the head of the Institute of Chartered Accountants met with members of my first profession and established that there's a lot of unhappiness with the way things are happening at SARS. And that did give rise to a meeting of our profession with the tax ombud. And that was as a result of feedback received from members of the Institute around the country. Now that's people who are dealing with SARS, tax practitioners dealing with SARS on a regular basis, having a fairly high degree of frustration in different areas. Now the man in the street I feel sympathy for, because where do they go to when they have a difficulty with the SARS? Practitioners have their professional bodies, they know the processes and rules, but the man in the street who might be trying to do his own tax, where do they turn to for assistance? And I've actually made the suggestion that there should be a non-governmental organization established to assist those taxpayers who may not be able to afford a tax practitioner to assist them, as is the case in America and other countries.
Well, Beric Croome, thank you so much for your time this evening. Remember, Beric Croome is an executive in the tax department at ENS Africa. You are listening to Classic Business, brought to you by Old Mutual Wealth.
Right now, you're probably driving the car you love. And tomorrow, you'll want to drive tomorrow's dream car too. So how much is enough to invest offshore, retire in style, and still be able to drive your dream car 20 years from now? How much is enough? An age-old question that needs a new answer, and Old Mutual Wealth has it. It's called Integrated Wealth Planning. It's a wealth map that puts you and your goals at its core, helping you plan how much is enough for you, for now, for your life, and for your legacy. Speak to your financial advisor today about how your Old Mutual Integrated Wealth Plan can help you do great things, or visit howmuchisenough.co.za. Old Mutual Wealth, brought to you through licensed financial services providers in the Old Mutual Group.
For access to more podcasts, visit www.classicfm.co.za.